I've been going really loopy in lockdown land. Luckily, it's a very gorgeous day out, so I'm going to hide out in the backyard and do some painting. I'm going to show a fun project that uses heraldry. Today I'm going to paint a bunch of shields for everyone in my camp that will hang off of a special plaque. And I've been wanting one of these for years. For this project, I'm going to be using several wooden plaques, starting with a big long plaque to hang everything from, and a bunch of individual shield shapes. I'm also going to be using paint and brushes and hooks and eyes and paint sealer. I've purchased these little wooden shapes from an online supplier, but if you're good with a saw, you can just cut these out from scratch. The first step is to just paint these with a base coat. For most of these, I'm going with the lightest color that's present in the design, white or yellow. I don't really care for the bright yellow that came with my paints, so I'm just going to mix in a little bit of red until I get the goldish tinge that I'm looking for. You can paint in whatever order you want, but I found that I got a much cleaner look if I painted yellow or white first and then painted the darker colors on top of that than when I tried to paint the light colors on top of a dark color. I just had to put extra layers of paint on. Once you've painted the base coat, just let everything dry. On the main plaque, I'm just going to use some painter's tape to help me mark my margins and keep everything aligned. Normally, I would use pencil for this, but I was having a really difficult time trying to erase it, and it was pretty obvious when you got close to the sign. So, masking tape it is. In my camp, we're going to be using this to show who's in camp and who's off wandering around. So I'm just going to paint in and out over the hanging spots. And my calligraphy could use a little bit of work, but that's what practice is for, right? Time to get to the fun part, painting the heraldry. I'm going to start with my family members. So this is going to be for my dad. I'm going to use masking tape to quickly mark off the square area where I'm going to paint. And then I just start going at it with the paintbrush. First, a lightning bolt. Yes, this is a lightning bolt. And then a pair of compass stars. Quick, easy to draw. Awesome. My sister's coat of arms is a bit more fun. It starts with an arched chief on the top, which is to say a bar that takes off the top third of the design with an arch in the bottom of it. So I just mark it off with some masking tape, cut the arch shape with an Exacto blade, and then I'm going to add a little bit of tape on the bottom to make sure that I don't accidentally paint in the wrong spots because my Exacto blade cut it off. Now, my sister's got a cat on hers, so I'm going to paint a cat. And, okay, it's not the best looking cat, but you know what? It's still a kitty. It's still pretty. And the cat's whacking that little compass star. After the paint has had a chance to dry, remove the masking tape and look at that lovely clean edge at the bottom of the chief. Masking tape is an excellent tool on this kind of project. Next, I'm going to paint my coat of arms. I'm going to start by covering my entire shield with masking tape. You can see from my signet ring that I've got this fancy border around the edge of my shield. So I'm going to show you some tricks that I use to get a nice even spacing like this around the weird shape of the shield. With a couple of different widths of painter's tape, I'm going to use it to curve around the edges and mark my margins. Then I take a ruler and a pencil and I mark down where I want the embattlements to be so that I can go over it with an Exacto knife and trim them off. And then very carefully remove all the parts that I want to paint black. This will help with getting a clean line. You can just freehand this if you want to. I admit I'm fussy. Here's a shield that I already did that progress on. I've also cut out the spots where I'm going to put my lightning bolt and my compass stars. Kind of wish I'd done the extra masking with my dad's, but I know better for next time, right? Once the fine details are done, I go back and I'm just going to slap on a bunch of black all over the border. Now, whenever you have masking with a lot of tiny fiddly bits like the embattlements on my border, be very slow and careful so you don't accidentally rip up a second layer of paint. But even if you make a mistake, it's okay. Sometimes paint will bleed underneath the edge of the tape. It's okay, just go back with some extra paint and just touch it up a little bit. And here's the shields from my family when we're camping together. I'm painting the shield of a friend of mine, and she's got this cool fess in the middle of her shield, that is to say, a horizontal bar, and it's dancetti, which means it's got a zigzag pattern going on. So once again, I'm going to take some painter's tape of different widths, pop it on the shield, take my ruler, and mark out where I want the zigzags to be before I cut off the excess that I don't need. Here's where I tell you I lost some footage. I did not realize that my battery in my camera was dead, so we're going to miss some of this transition, but I'm going to show you how it turns out afterwards. Above the fess, I painted it green. Below the fess, I painted it purple. And once again, because there's lots of little points, if I very carefully peel off the painter's tape, and look at that! Look at how pretty that is. In the base of her arms, she has 4 interlaced knitting needles. Once it dries, I go back and add a little bit of black outlining for some definition's sake. And there we go. Another one of my campmates has a design where he's got a white chief on top, so that white bar taking up the top third of the design. And then he's got 3 wolf heads, so I'm using a little painter's tape once again to help mark where they are so I don't accidentally make it look all wonky. I was having a hard time making the white bits small enough, so I just went back in once it was dry and painted in a couple of details with some black. Not everybody has heraldry, but I still want to include them, so you can just paint their favorite color on the shield and then put a monogram over it. Simple, quick solution. Another one of my campmates puts this little symbol on a lot of his stuff, so I'm just going to paint that on his shield. It's a combination of the Norse letter for M and a medieval version of a music note. These signs are going to be out in who knows what kind of weather, and I want to protect the paint job I just did, so as an extra step, I'm going to coat them all with a couple of layers of sealant. Just spray one on, let it dry, and then spray it over again. You can do this however many times you want to. I'm just going to go through 2 or 3 times. After all the paint is dry, it's time to start thinking about how you're going to hang this sucker. Now, I went with holes and hooks, but because it was the middle of lockdown and I couldn't physically check the pieces together, I ordered the wrong size hook. But that's okay. I also happen to have a bunch of chainmail links lying around. So my solution, until I can get bigger hooks, is to take these rings and put them through the holes in the signs. And then I'm just going to bend the S-hooks into these links. Now that the shields can hang on the sign, I have to worry about how I'm going to hang the sign. You can use rope or chain or string or even zip ties. I'm just going to go with some butcher's twine because it's simple and cheap and I can cut it off if I need to. I've attached my sign to my fence. The reason I used 3 holes in the top is for balancing purposes. If I only had 2 holes and everybody's shield was on one side, it would overbalance and get crooked, and that's just not pretty. The middle hole adds a bit of extra stability. You can see here why I chose to have a hole in the top and bottom of all the shields, so you can just hang all of the shields in a row. Everybody's in camp, everybody's under in. If someone's going out of camp and you want to make sure your friends will know that you're not around, just swap it over to the other side. Little addendum, most of this video was shot back in April, long before any of us knew just how bad things were going to get. And certainly before Pennsic and all the other big camping events started getting canceled. However, I didn't want any of these shields to just sit in storage for a year or more. I put too much work into them. However, one of my roommates has been teleworking just like a lot of other people have been, so I made her a bit of a sign to go on the office door to let everybody know in the house when they could come in and bother her and when she needed to be left alone. Please hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do more videos on fun with heraldry projects.